peak romance. It's time to run. I'm not gonna read a self-help book. I'm so sorry. They look pretty much identical. Hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Is back talking about books. Today we are going to be doing, if you can see from the titles of the video, talking about the publishing industry, talking about books, reading, fast fashion, all of that stuff. It's gonna be a little video essay moment. Let's just get right into it. I feel like the publishing industry has, because of the rise of TikTok, changed a little bit. I just wanted to talk about these changes, what is different, and how we can move forward from there. What do I mean by fast fashion publishing? We have to start from the beginning. And the beginning starts in 2019, 2020, when there was a certain sickness, shall we say, that left everybody indoors all of the time. And through that was the rise of TikTok in around 2019, 2020. People would make countless dance videos. Charli D'Amelio and Addison Rae became rising stars and became very well known. This made everybody want to be a creator. It became very attainable and very easy to navigate. The idea of TikTok was that you make videos that would, like YouTube similarly, you make videos to catch people's attention, but they were short videos that you can just see on your For You page and you scroll through. TikTok also has things like niches. One of those niches became BookTok. This came shortly after the rise of TikTok. The book community banded together to create BookTok. And after BookTok, we saw a huge rise of the consumption of reading and becoming readers. I was one of those people. Even before the rise of TikTok, I loved reading, but I wasn't really super into it. A lot of the recommendations I didn't really get anywhere. I just went to the bookstore, read the backs of the books, spent my time perusing Barnes & Noble, reading the back of books, looking at the covers. Yes, I judge book by its covers, putting in my cart, and then reading it. After the rise of BookTok, I got most of my recommendations on TikTok, just like everybody else. Books then in 2020, 2021 became a trend. On TikTok, there were certain sounds that you would correlate to BookTok. For example, oh my god, I can't even do it. Wait, am I doing it right? It's time to run, it's time to run. Sorry, but you know what I'm talking about, I hope, or else I just embarrass myself in front of everybody. There were certain sounds that you would correlate to book recommendations. There would be transitions that were done, and this is also through BookTok was the resurgence of Colleen Hoover and Sarah J. Maas. They were both very popular authors, but through BookTok, their books had a huge resurgence and they went on the bestsellers list once again. BookTok is also the reason why Mariana Zapata is a big name and Anna Huang. Even Madeline Miller, I would argue, because Madeline Miller's book, The Song of Achilles, came out in, I believe, 2012. I personally never heard of it until BookTok, and once it was published, once it became really big on TikTok, it went back on the bestsellers list and it created another cult following of this book. And now everybody loves Madeline Miller. One of the first huge impacts I saw of TikTok on the publishing community and the publishing industry was through The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I remember trying so desperately wanting to read this book because everybody was recommending it to me on my For You page. I remember calling Barnes & Nobles, multiple, because they were sold out everywhere. Swear to God, they were sold out. I called one and they said, yes, we have one left on the shelf. Would you like me to hold it for you? I said, yes, please. I will be there in an hour. I picked up the book at Barnes & Noble. When I went there, usually the holds shelf is right behind the counter, and I saw 4 other holds of Addie LaRue. So I got the last one that was on hold. I just thought that influence is insane and crazy. Some of the big name books that we associate with BookTok is The Song of Achilles, Six of Crows, and Crooked Kingdom, Red, White, and Royal Blue, It Ends With Us, A Court in Thorns and Roses, The Hating Game, Shatter Me, the list goes on. But this is, to me, the beginnings of BookTok. This is the books that everybody was wanting to read when BookTok was in its prime. These were the first books that also really got me into reading. Oh, also Heartless. I remember Heartless being everywhere on BookTok. And these were the books that really got me into reading. I think that TikTok did an amazing job with that, with influencing people and motivating people to pick up books again and to read again. To have this hobby hobby to have this community, this niche that everybody loved, and you could talk to other people about it. I would see countless videos of book hauls. I would look at my shelf to compare the books in their hauls to the books on my shelf, and I said, wait, they look pretty much identical because everybody was reading the same books. We were getting the same recommendations. I just thought that was funny, but it's also a good thing to note. Now, to this day, every single time I walk into Barnes & Noble, you will see an entire shelf, an entire section that says BookTok picks or spicy BookTok recommendations. And a lot of the times, these BookTok books become bestsellers. It's a really easy, good way of promoting your books. This is kind of what I wanted to talk about and have a little open discussion about it. What does this have to do with fast fashion? What do I mean fast fashion publishing? Having this marketing, having TikTok there, having this type of marketing and media has kind of changed the publishing community as a whole. I don't know much about publishing. I am just a reader. I don't work in publishing or any of that, but this is just things that I've noticed as a reader. Now we have to talk about fast fashion publishing. What does that mean? The idea of fast fashion, it's like Shein, Fashion Nova, Zara. A lot of these places are fast fashion places. They make clothes, cheap, low quality clothing that is easy and quick to make that you can have on the shelves stacked. They will take trends and say, we can put it in stores by next week. And they will have hundreds and hundreds and thousands even of items that you could put in your cart and buy. This is the idea of overconsumption and consumerism. And through fast fashion, because it is made of cheap materials, usually the clothes don't last as long and they're not as well made. So you have to go out and buy new clothes again and again, therefore creating that cycle of consumption, just not getting that much good quality, having trend after trend of clothes item and Y2K and croquette, and in the fashion community, trends are flipping, not year by year, but month by month. So maybe this month, bows are really in season, but maybe next month, it's gonna be something totally different, and then everybody's gonna hate the croquette ballerina-esque type of look. So that's kind of the idea of what fast fashion is. Now, let's go back to the books. Because TikTok and social media has made the marketing of books just so much easier, people can go straight to the source and not necessarily really need a publisher to market their books anymore. I think that it is a give and a take. There's always goods and bads to everything. I do hear a lot of authors saying that maybe, I don't know where I heard this from, that a lot of authors who are traditionally published, don't get the help of their publishers anymore. They have to do a lot of the work of marketing their own books, having to make their own TikToks and put the work out there. But on the other hand, there are people who have never thought of writing a book, never dreamed or imagined that they could publish their book. That makes it so much easier to independently publish and become a bestseller. A lot of those books, if you market it well, can sell out and you are now a very well-known author. One example of this is with Lightlar. Mind you, I have never read this book in my life. I don't know if I plan on reading it, to be honest, but the marketing for this book was mainly made through social media. It was made through TikTok, and everybody was talking about this book before it even came out. There was controversies over it and everything like that, but because of the talk of this book, it became an instant bestseller. And also things like Kindle Unlimited and various other ways of independently publishing your books, it just makes it a lot easier to become an author, to actually write your book and put it out and give it out to the world. This kind of leaves more way. We're going down this little rabbit hole because it's so much easier to publish and promote your books. Now it's created a culture of reading and consuming literature and fiction. Because I read fiction. I'm not going to read a self-help book. I'm so sorry. But it's created a culture of reading fiction that has a huge and heavy emphasis on tropes and eye-catching quotes as opposed to the story or the characters as much. I find myself going a lot back and forth and being really frustrated as a reader because of this. There's a lot of good and a lot of bad with it. Now I do see, because it's so easy to promote on TikTok, because of fast fashion publishing and just being able to publish your book and not really need an editor, not really need specific traditional publishing. You can just write your book, not need it edited, put it out yourself and have it out to the world, and it might not be that good because of traditional publishing, like I said, I don't know 100% a lot about it, but you have editors, you have people looking through your work, you have people who read the book over and over again to see if it is ready to publish. Now, when you are independently publish a book, you don't really need any of that. You can write the book, and I find myself reading a lot of books nowadays that have a lot of grammatical errors, which is crazy to say. To have a book that you say is your artwork and it just has so much grammatical errors, or editing, instead of saying is, it says like they typed it out wrong. And a lot of the times, because you want to make money off of writing books, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but because you want to make money writing books, you want to be an author, you want to live being an author and being an artist, it's created a culture where we promote tropes and we promote quotes. We don't promote the book, we don't promote the characters, we don't promote the story anymore. We don't say, hey, this book is written beautifully. It is a story that I think everybody needs to be told. We say, hey, this is an enemies to lovers romantasy book that has vampires and fairies. That is how we describe books now. And that's how readers say, okay, I want to read that. And because of that, authors are not writing stories that they feel need to be told. Authors are instead writing stories based around certain tropes that they know is gonna be eye-catching and easily digestible. Everybody would want to pick it up and read it. It seems as if every single day I am picking up more and more books that I just don't really get invested in the slightest. I find myself browsing through things like Kindle Unlimited or even the bookstore and not wanting to personally, like I used to in the past, look at a book, not know anything about it, read the back of it and say, oh, this seems really interesting, and put it in my cart. Instead, I'll pick up a book, but if it doesn't look like I recognize the cover or recognize the story already off of TikTok or YouTube, and I don't hear anybody talk about it, I think to myself, this book is not worth my time. So in that sense, a lot of books are being pushed under the rug. Books and authors that maybe we should be bringing up and we don't know about anymore. I just think that the market has just become really saturated, and it's really hard to tell what could be a really good quality read versus a really bad one. And I think in that same vein, we as readers, I don't know about you guys, but I'm just talking about myself, have been overly taking the opinions of what other people like and trying to meld that into our own sense of what we like to read, even though what everybody may like to read is gonna be different. In every single one of my videos, every single one of my reviews, your opinion is your own, my opinion is my own. You can take whatever I say with a grain of salt. You might absolutely wholeheartedly love a book that I utterly hate, and I just think that's the magic of words, and that's the magic of writing, and that is 100% okay. It's hard for me to kind of get back into that mindset, to want to go to a bookstore blindly, to pick up a book I have never seen in my life, not need to see that on the top it says New York Times bestseller, not care, but look at the back of a book, think, wow, this seems like a really interesting story, read the first few chapters, read the first few pages and say, wow, this seems very beautifully written, and put it in my cart and read it and recommend it. That is sort of what I wish we could get back to, but it is, you know, whatever. So that's kind of the bad thing about it. The good thing about it is that a lot of these authors are finally getting their time to shine. Anybody now can be an author. Anybody can write. It's very much giving Ratatouille vibes of anybody can cook. Anybody can write. Everybody can finally chase their dreams. It's not as unachievable as it may have been in the past. Having to write a book, having to send it out to agents to try to get them to back you, and reading is a lot of work. Reading takes a lot of time. Doing all of that has just become so much easier now because you don't have to get an agent, you don't have to try to find a publisher for these books. You can just publish it on your own and it can still be very popular and people can still be able to see it and to read your work. I really love that idea, and I feel like we have gotten a lot of authors that I would have never thought of, and stories that I absolutely wholeheartedly love I would have never gotten if it wasn't for that. For example, I think one person who is the epitome of this video is Anna Huang. I love her and hate her at the same time. I love some of her books. I don't like them all. I loved Twisted Games and Twisted Hate. I think that is where she peaked. With the Twisted series, not all of them are that great, but Twisted Games and Twisted Hate, for me, peak peak romance, okay? Loved it to death. Also peak smut. I loved the smut. But as time has gone on, I have her on TikTok and I still read her books. I will always still be reading her book because they're just so easy to read. I've noticed that she falls under the trappings of fast fashion publishing. She is knocking out books left and right. She is knocking out books every 4 to 6 months. And it's book after book after book. I just finished King of Pride, and right after, King of Greed's already out. And then I see on TikTok, I think she might be doing another series. I don't know yet. It hasn't come out yet if she's gonna do it or not by the time I'm filming this video. But she's trying to promote something on her TikTok that she might come out with another series. And I just feel like, girl, you are going so fast. And the stories are just getting sloppier and sloppier as time has gone on. The characters are becoming copy and pastes of each other. They are the same characters over and over again. And it doesn't seem like she's writing stories anymore that feel important to her. It doesn't feel like she's writing characters and romances that feel larger than life. It feels like she's just writing it through the tropes, and I think she suffers a lot from this. For example, the entire Twisted series, when you open the books, it says a brother's best friend romance, a forbidden romance, bodyguard romance, and when she markets the books, you only see quote after quote after quote of Dante saying this and saying, "You're my wife," something like that, like a very eye-catching quote. She suffers a lot from this. This is how she got big. It worked really well from her, but now when I read it, it feels copy and paste. It doesn't feel like I'm reading a story that is important anymore, and it feels kind of bland, and it makes me really sad to say. Now for me as a reader, I feel like it's really hard to tell what would be a good story for me and what would be a bad story for me. It's just so hard for me to pick up a book and want to read it anymore because I'm just thinking, is this gonna be another mediocre book going back to how things are grammatically incorrect? For example, the Blood and Ash series. I've never read that series in my life, but I remember everyone saying the first book was so good. If you loved A Court of Thorns and Roses, you're gonna love this book. The second book was so good. And then it kind of fell off and no one talked about it. And people talking about the series as a whole as the books went on and as the author was pumping out book by book by book by book so quickly that you could tell she did not have an editor. There was so many grammatical errors in that book. I think it was like the third or fourth book of that series. You would read the back and it would have grammatical errors on it. How can you have grammatical errors in the synopsis of the book? You put that out to the world. As a reader, it's just really hard now for me to filter out what books I want to read and what books I don't. I don't want to be influenced anymore by what I see online and by what other people are reading, by what other people might think about a book, by if they like it or not. It's just so much overconsumption, and I hope that one day we can go back to taking our time reading, to really hold on to the stories that we read, have it close to our hearts, reading stories that we feel like we care about, and not having so much pressure as readers ourselves to read so many books a year. I feel like I suffered from this too. Even when you go on TikTok, even when you go on Goodreads, you set a reading goal, right? And you see people read 100 books a year, 150 books a year. That's like a book every other day. To me, it's like, how can you read that much and care for every single one of those characters, every single one of those stories? It feels impossible. It's kind of a balancing act of doing that. If there's anything 2023 has taught me, is that quality is better than quantity, and it's okay to not finish books if I don't really like them. It's really just hard to differentiate now a story that will feel memorable to me and a story that doesn't. Because I used to love reading. I used to pick up every single book I would pick up, I would fall in love with. But now I will walk into Barnes & Noble and feel not as excited anymore. Thinking, I'm scared to buy this book, I'm scared to pick this book up because I don't know if it's gonna be good. There's a 50% chance that it's gonna be anything worth my personal while. Before this idea of pumping out books over and over, and before we had this idea of making books based on tropes and quotes, I could trust my instincts, and that 80%, 75% of the time, I could pick up a book and be at least okay with the read. Now I feel like everything is just overproduced, over excessive, and it's just hard for me to find a good book. This is just my little ramble of the day. Please let me know your thoughts below on this idea of what you think of this idea of fast fashion publishing. I feel like I've got this idea for the video of, I just watch a lot of YouTube, and I think I was watching something on YouTube. It's just something I did want to talk about, and I thought it was important because I felt myself feeling that way a lot too, and feeling like authors now are just pumping out books, and they're not writing things that they actually care about. They're just writing it based on the tropes and stuff. TikTok has been really good for authors, but it's also been really bad, and kind of that dichotomy of that. So just let me know all of your thoughts below on what you think. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next video.